How sleep deprivation turned me into a petty little bitch. My partner and I have been together for many years. He has always snored, but in recent years it has gotten exponentially worse. I'm talking lawnmower right outside your window kind of nonsense. I had noise-canceling headphones and sleep sounds cranked up to just under the threshold for hearing damage. But it was like bringing a fart to a shit fight. And don't even get me started on how much it vibrated the bed. I would have preferred a real phone call from a Nigerian prince. Usually I would just escape to the couch in the living room, but we had to move into a studio for a few months last year. So when my partner snored, I had literally nowhere to go except the kitchen and bathroom. I actually tried sleeping in the bathroom once. It almost worked, but then I was woken up by the sound of the upstairs neighbor violently shitting themselves.
Nicht gut trauriger Smiley.
We tried a few things to improve the snoring, but nothing worked. He wouldn't go to the doctor. He also didn't understand how loud it actually was and how upset I was about it. So he would usually just joke about it when I brought it up. I don't even snore, he laughed. You snore louder than I do. Normally, I'm not a vengeful person at all, but getting less than 5 hours of sleep night after night, week after week, and not being taken seriously, it awakened something evil in me. I thought about setting him on fire, and then myself, but then I remembered, oh yeah, I'm not a fucking serial killer. So I settled on something less life-ending. I took out my phone one night and recorded about 10 minutes of his snoring. Got the microphone right up in there for that top-notch distorted sound. I knew I would use this recording, and how, but I didn't know when. One afternoon, my partner was having a nap. Ah, how sweet, I thought. This is perfect. I kissed him on the forehead. Then I connected my phone to our Bluetooth speaker, hid the speaker in the pile of random shit under our bed, put on my shoes, and went outside to take a walk. But before I left, I opened the recording, hit the continuous loop button, set my phone volume to full, and pressed play. I tucked my phone under the rubbish bin and went for a delightful 45-minute stroll to the supermarket and back. My partner stopped making jokes about his snoring after that, and thankfully, we managed to find a new place with a spare room. Turns out I'm actually quite a nice person when I get enough sleep. Vending machines stole my money, so I had my revenge. In my university, there is a vending machine selling sandwiches. One day, I bought one and the machine didn't return me all my change, missing $2. Where I live, we have loonies and toonies, $1 and $2 coins. The machine has a reputation, and so does its owner. After 4 weeks, I didn't get my money back. I put signs on the machine, this machine doesn't give all the change back. I asked the secretary and the vice dean, and they were tired of the machine and the people complaining, so they allowed it. There are 3 other machines, and they all have the same problem. The owner of my machine took down my sign, and every time I put another one back. It is to be noted that I am extremely cheap. After a month, I stopped trying to be refunded. However, something happened. I had to use the machine for an emergency, and the machine stole $8. That was it for me, so I decided to have my revenge. I am a numismat, coin collector, and also a coin roll hunter. I like to go through thousands of dollars of change every month to find rare coins. The machine accepts nickels. You see where I am going with this? The next time I took a box of nickels from the bank, I decided to pay the machine in nickels. I paid around $9 every meal in nickels. It's a long process, but it's worth it. Many teachers and students were rooting for me because they thought I could force the owner to fix the machine. I started bringing boxes of nickels at school and exchanging it for bills to students who wanted to do the same thing. Hopefully the machine will be fixed soon, because the owner currently needs to carry hundreds of dollars of nickels every week. Brilliant revenge. Not me, but an unknown neighbor. I still don't know who did this. We used to have an arsehole neighbor who would park anywhere, even partially blocking dropped curbs and a disabled space. He would have shouting matches with various family members, all in all an irritating twat. Someone tied a rope from his bumper to his 2 wheel bins. As the rope was quite long, he had left his driveway and on the road before the bins were being dragged along. Now I only saw the aftermath as I heard the banging and shouting. I went outside, and when he saw me asked if I did it, which I denied, but he got even more angry because I just couldn't stop myself grinning. He called the police, but nothing came of it. He ruined my childhood. I threw away his letters and cut him away from his family. My father emotionally abused me my entire life and sexually abused me from when I was 12 till I went to the army at 18. mandatory service in my country, where I finally got the support I needed to report him to the police. He was immediately arrested and put in jail until the end of the trial, and my mom immediately started the process of divorcing him. Unfortunately, as part of this process, she had to play nice with him, so we would get the apartment and the car. One part of that was that she would forward his letters to his mother and sister. They both live in the country my parents immigrated from, and why he couldn't just send them letters from prison, but he would send the letters to our address, and my mom would scan and email them. I have no idea how Mom got their responses to him, but she did. I hated seeing these letters, and I always would, as I returned home before my mom. So at some point I decided that enough was enough. I opened the letter, read the first few lines just to see how miserable he was in jail, and then threw it away at the recycling across the road. The letters still kept coming, and I kept throwing them away, until he got desperate enough to use registered mail. Of course, the notice about it found its way into the garbage as well. My mom actually asked me about it, but I said I saw nothing, and she believed me. Shortly after that, the letters just stopped coming. I hate that on top of everything he did to me, I lost my aunt and grandma, whom I really liked. They don't talk to me anymore, only to my mom, but at least he doesn't get to talk to them either, and I hope he believes they chose to cut contact with him. Superglue and padlocks. Many years ago, when I went to the local community college for a course, if you wanted a locker to keep your stuff in, you had to bring a padlock and claim an empty locker. This was just common sense. Find an empty, and I stress empty locker, and then put your padlock on it. After a bit of a wait and walk round over the course of a couple of weeks, stiff competition for lockers, I managed to secure a locker from an outgoing student, stuck my padlock on it, and all was good for a while. Until I went to my locker one day to find my stuff on the top of the lock broken off and replaced by someone else's padlock. Cue PettyRevenge. Covertly stick a few drops of superglue, crazy glue in the US I think, in the keyhole and slip away. The locker happened to be right outside one of my classes, and it just happened that the person who returned to their misappropriated locker to gain access. I didn't go out and look, but we could hear the ensuing frustration, shouts, shaking, battering about in vain attempts to gain access to very much now useless, but locked solid padlock. I never glued any locks after that, and I'm sure the dude got his stuff out eventually, beaming face with smiling eyes. You don't like it? No will do. Went to a strict public school. They allowed hair color and stuff, but this one religious teacher decided to pick on me for having my hair dyed red. Only the tips part of my hair was dyed, in case I regret it, so I can just cut it short. One time, we got into the topic of proper grooming and stuff. Instead of discussing, she spent almost her entire 1H class duration to talk about how people who dyes their hair, get tattoos, and have piercings will not get anywhere in life. She spoke in broad topic, but I knew it was directed at me when she said, "When did you ever see a highly professional woman with red hair?" I was the only one in the class with dyed hair. She spent her entire time talking about how they'd never get anywhere in life. The next week, I dyed my entire hair to spite her. Some might say it's disrespectful, but she never had the right to decide and tell me I'd never get anywhere in life just because my hair is dyed. I was the victim. Years ago, I split from living with my girlfriend and moved out, leaving my luxury car on our driveway. A few months later, I wanted to sell it, but when I tried to drive it away, the exhaust fell off. I assumed it was rust from standing and used for those months, but I paid for an expensive full stainless steel exhaust to be fitted, sold the car, and thought no more of it. A few years later, we'd both mellowed a bit and started talking again, and she confessed that a traveler had knocked on the door, said he'd seen the car standing for a long time, and could he buy the exhaust for his car? She said it was okay as long as he fitted his old exhaust back on my car, which he did. She took the money, and when I turned up, loved seeing the exhaust he'd roughly fitted fall off so quickly when I got around to collecting the car. TBH, she was a great girl, and in those later years, when we were friendly again and she confessed what she'd done, I saw the funny side of it. High school bully got his. Growing up, there was a kid in my grade whom I'll call Larry, because that was not his name. Larry and I were on good terms in elementary school. However, when the middle school years came, he decided to be one of my bullies. Fast forward to senior year of high school. All my other bullies had lost interest in me during our sophomore year, but not Larry. One day, he did something truly despicable to me. There was no physical damage to me, but his action showed an astonishing depth of contempt. I did not react in the moment of my humiliation, because any reaction would have been a reward. Cue petty revenge. Remember magazines? Remember those cards and magazines, the ones you could fill out to get a subscription to that, or some other magazine? Lots of companies and organizations put those cards in magazines. Publishers, of course, but also the military, nonprofits, AARP, you name it. Postage for those cards was paid by the recipient. I started collecting those cards. I collected them from my parents' magazines, from my grandparents' magazines, from any magazine I could get my hands on. When I had a thick stack of them, a couple hundred or more, I started filling them out with Larry's name and address. I then deposited those cards in a mailbox. I never heard what his reaction was, but in addition to the countless subscriptions he had to cancel, I imagine he was on all the mailing lists for years and got an incessant stream of unwanted solicitations. Up yours, Larry. Did I say that? My mother started dating my dad's best friend immediately after he died. There's no official proof that they started before, but they were seen together. Tonight, I had to return something to my mom. I walked in her house and they were already in bed. Knocked on the door, they said, "Come in." I responded, "Is it safe?" They laugh a little and say yes. I used that opening to tell my mom of the time I was 9 and had growing pains at night. I went to wake her up, and when she didn't respond to the knocking, I opened the door and walked in on her and my dad in adult time. Nothing like reminding my dad's best friend that he's in my dad's bed with my dad's wife. Piss in my taxi? You will pay. I have a number of wild stories from my taxi driving days when I was at university. This was many years ago and very late at night. I picked this bloke up in the city on a Friday night. I remember that because he was wearing a suit. He was pretty drunk and started directing some pretty contemptuous and demeaning language at me. Then he went quiet for a little while before the stench of piss hit my nostrils. He was pissing on the floor in the back seat. I was furious. I pulled over and dragged him out onto the footpath where he fell over on the grass. His jacket came off in my hand while this was happening, so I took his wallet from the inside pocket and drove off, leaving him behind. He had about $80 in it, so I nicked it and threw his wallet in a bin. Cunt. He was now in the middle of the suburbs, still 5 to 10 kilometers away from home, with no money and no way of calling for a taxi because this was all pre-mobile phones. I hope you turned into a kinder person. Treat my dad like shit. Have fun with your puzzle. Sorry, this is a bit of rant. I love my mom, but she's an awful person. She suffers from undiagnosed GAD, BPD, and OCD, which has made her increasingly mean-spirited, narcissistic, and just an all-around soul-sucking wretch. My mom, who hasn't worked a job since the 90s, treats my dad like shit and is always ragging on him as soon as he gets home from work. She'll bitch about him dragging dirt into the house, even though he takes his shoes off at the door. She yells at him for having the TV too loud, even though it's at 11 out of 100, and you can barely hear the dialogue of the show. She complains about everything, and even I can't have a conversation with her without her speaking only in terms of negatives. Bring up something benign like the weather, and she'll complain it's too hot, or it's too cold, or we're in a drought, or we're going to get flooded because of the rain. My dad, on the other hand, is a peaceful old goober who wants nothing more than to work an honest day's wage, try to provide as best as he can for my mom, and maybe watch his Stargate shows in peace. Well, my mom is addicted to soda. She drinks like 8 cans of pop a day. As you all know, soda is fucking ridiculously expensive these days. My dad, always thinking of my mom, noticed that our local grocer was having a huge buy some get some for free deal on cases of soda. He enlisted my help and we bought like $300 worth of soda, hitting the store a couple of times to get past the 10-case limit. We went back to my parents' house and started stacking the soda in the basement. Did my mom thank my dad for this bounty of soda?
Hell no.
She proceeded to rip him a new asshole because he bought 7-Up instead of Fresca. Mind you, the 7-Up was like 5% of the soda we bought. The rest was Pepsi or Coke. I couldn't believe how awful she was being to my poor dad. Cue the petty revenge. See, my mom loves to do jigsaw puzzles. She'll sit in her own private TV room for hours watching shows and completing endless amounts of puzzles. She saves the puzzles when she's done and puts them back in their original box so she can do them again after enough time has passed that she's forgotten the puzzle. Well, after she blew up on my dad about the soda, I excused myself and went upstairs to use the bathroom. I could still hear her bitching at my dad downstairs, and I stepped into her room to find a semi-completed puzzle sprawled on her desk in front of the TV. I grabbed a single piece from the box and put it in my pocket. Pretty small and petty, I know, but I also know it will drive her nuts that she was just one piece off from completing the puzzle. It's even better knowing she'll realize she's a piece short as she gets down to the last 5 or so pieces and realizes that she doesn't have enough to complete the puzzle. I felt pretty happy about this petty revenge as was about to walk out of her room when I thought, fuck it, and I went back in and quickly opened every completed puzzle box I could find and took a single puzzle piece out of each one. I hope she slowly goes nuts each time she decides to redo a previously completed puzzle and finds herself short just one puzzle piece. Finally getting my personal justice after experience with abusive ex. I'm gonna try to be as succinct as possible here. I was with my abuser for 3 years. During this time, he tried to control me. He belittled and purposely limited my highly ambitious nature. He tried to convince me that men had it worse during pregnancy. He has been openly racist to me, and outwardly, I am a person of color. He shoved me to the wall with his hands on my neck when I cried when Trump won in 2016. He was sexually aggressive and had a lot of sexual fantasies that were very questionable to the point where my body shut down. He loved shitting on women's bodies after they've given birth, and mind you, he was below average and has no sense of athleticism. He was forceful about having children with me, and I wasn't ready. He told me that I would be an old haggard if I didn't have children at 24. When I was trying to finish university, he was 27 and his men ovaries were having extreme baby fever. He would scream at me and record me every time we would have fights. He also cheated on me. It's been many years and I face vomiting every time for allowing myself to have given him that time I can never have back, but I have forgiven myself and buried him deep into a black hole. Yesterday, I went to a get-together with a few hometown friends. My friend is mutuals with my ex's sister, and she spilled some tea about him without me asking LOL. He's now married with the woman he was sleeping with during that time frame. They popped out 3 kids in 2.5 years, no breaks. His wife is controlling, and my friend pointed out that she was really physically unappealing. She found out that I moved back home, I'm leaving in a few months, and she was so outraged that now they're moving to Idaho LOL, him in SoCal, which is the last trip him and I took before we broke up. His mom and sister have cut off ties with him and his family cause he hurt his mom. He apparently still checks my online presence and continuously thinks about me. I know that wasn't petty, but I'm happy that the universe helped him get the life he always dreamed of, rolling on the floor laughing. Edit update, 10:14 a.m., March 25th. Hi everyone. Thank you for sharing your stories and all sorts of comments. I 100% am grateful for all of you all. I wanted to share this on here because it felt like a good place to vent. I didn't think it would receive a lot of comments and such. I wanted to post this because I feel it's quite draining to respond to each message of support, as it's not fun reliving experiences and such, but thank you nonetheless. Anyway, just to clarify, this was a relationship that started 10 years ago and ended a long time ago. So, I've since moved on and have had a really adventurous and fruitful life, fulfilling whatever my heart desires. This person was my literal first boyfriend LOL. I am 31 now. I didn't grow up in an environment where healthy relationships were a thing. We have always been taught to endure and persevere and ignore in my family/culture. I didn't know my experiences were terrifying and that my feelings of hurt were genuinely normal until I started talking to my friends and learning of other people's experiences. I went along with everything and endured because 1. I felt trapped and thought my perception of what is considered normal were basically gaslight by this human. 2. My younger self thought that enduring struggles was a test of the strength of a relationship. Minus the openly racist comments, everything I've mentioned were of him confiding his thoughts and true emotions in private. Yes, we had an entire argument about pregnancy and how he thought it was weird that his stepsister didn't snap back into her petite form. I'm gonna stop there. It gets worse. I choose to move on with my life and remove any remaining skid marks he's left on my psyche by going to therapy and becoming the best version of myself.